There's always something that needs a little fixing on Farpoint Farms.
Hey guys, it's Eric, owner of Farpoint Farms, restorations and repairs here in the mountains, North Carolina, and tonight we'll be doing some modifications to the Mitsubishi Mirage. This is the 2018. It's getting ready to come out of warranty, and I figured it was time to do something I've been thinking about doing. I wasn't sure if this is going to make that big of a difference. I'm still not sure if it's going to make that big of a difference, but I figured why not? Let's try it out. This is what I'm trying out, and this is a Ultra Racing rear sway bar, rear torsion bar. And so these cars, you know, people say they don't handle as well as, say, the Toyota Echo or the Yaris that I had before it. I haven't really noticed that much problem with its handling here in the mountains, except for maybe when I have a lot of weight in the rear. If I put all the groceries and a couple people in the car, yeah, she tends to wallow a little bit side to side. Probably more related to the tire size, which is a very narrow tire to get better fuel economy. But I reached out to this company and they said, oh yeah, we've had good success with it. It's an overseas company, but they do sell to America. They have a whole bunch of suspension stiffening parts available for the Mirage, which is kind of cool. And of course they do stuff for all the other cars. I'll leave a link to the part number for this one here. Now, this did not come with any instructions, and I wasn't able to find any instructions for it online. But it does seem to be fairly simple. Raise the car up on jack stands. You want to support it by the unibody, not by the rear axle, right? And you've got these two plates. These plates are going to slide in underneath the rear springs. So you probably have to pry up or compress the spring slightly to get these in there. Once they're in there, you've got two bolts on each side. 1, 2, 1, 2. And that's going to hold that thing up. It sits about an inch lower than the rear axle, the beam that's there. So it really shouldn't cause any issues with clearance. I have a gravel driveway here. And even at stock road height, I'm always worried that I'm going to grab a rut or something like that and damage the underside of my car. So the Mirage, one of the reasons I bought it is it has a good amount of clearance from the factory. I think it's 5.5 or 6 inches, so it's pretty nice. Anyway, that's it. We're going to go ahead and get started here. I'll get the light underneath here and get to showing you how this thing gets installed. And I'll do a follow-up and show you if I really felt like it was worth it or not. Now, I'm not a performance driver by any means. I wouldn't have bought the Mirage if I was into the need for speed. I'm more into the need for good fuel economy, and I have a feeling shortly more people will be as well. But anyway, let's get to it, and I'll show you. Now, I will be using a scissor lift, a mid-rise scissor lift to do this, but you can totally do this job in jack stands. Okay, with the spring out of the way, we've got our shock off to lower this thing down enough to get our spring out. I'm just supporting the weight here just a little bit. I could lift up on this without use of a jack. I've just got this kind of just leaning against it to hold it in place. But we have our plate. There's our plate. And we're going to install that. Hopefully. Like so. Right? And then we've got, for each of the three, there is a lock washer, a regular washer. There's our lock washer, our regular washer, and a nut. And so I'm going to just go ahead and slide this up in there. And hopefully, without having enough hands to do this really by myself, but we'll get that in there. There we go. It might be impossible for you to see, but I'll show you here in a second what I'm doing. Hopefully you can see that. So I've got my 3 nuts in there, 3 bolts with lock washers and regular washers spaced in there. And now I'm just going to lower down this axle again a little bit. Just enough, right about there should be enough to slide our spring back into place. Slide that back in there. There we go. Cool. Now we can pump that back up a little bit. I'm just going to push up on it. Put my bolt back in for that strut. And we'll move on, or that shock. Ooh, and we'll move on to the other side. There we go. Always start these things by hand or you're going to run into problems. I have not tightened any of these down. I'm not going to until I get the other side put on. So let's do that now. All right, here we are on the passenger side. So same rules apply. What I'm going to do here, and this time I'll show you while I film it because I don't think I hit record, unfortunately. Here's our spring. We're going to need to release enough tension on this spring, which is almost all the way fully unloaded as it is. But we got to pull this out in order to get our plate in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to support it. And if you're doing this on the ground, which most of you will be, you just do that with a jack stand. But you're not going to really put any weight on it. You're just literally going to support it. Okay, that's all I've done there. Then I'm going to take that 17mm bolt out that's holding in the shock, and then I can lower this thing down a little bit, and that'll remove enough tension to slide that out. I'm not taking both off at the same time. I'm only taking one off. That way the torsion bar doesn't flop all the way down, put unnecessary stress on brake lines, brake hoses, speed sensors, anything that might be hanging on back here. I don't want to damage any of that, so I'm not going to. Okay, we're getting that free right there. Now I'm going to lower that down just a little bit. Okay, I'm still supporting it just barely, but as you can see, now I've got enough slack off of there that I can get that piece in there. So let's go ahead and do that. There we go. And just like before, I'm going to slot that in there, make sure the holes all line up. There we go. And our nuts and washers. All right, now that we have our sway bar perfectly in place and all 6 nuts and bolts on there, we're going to go ahead and tighten those down before putting that spring back in case we need to make any kind of adjustment. You can actually get to the Phillips heads that are on top of there, but it's probably easier just to do it now while everything's kind of dropped down a little. There we go. Cool. All right, back in there on the top and on the bottom on both sides. Now it's just a matter of tightening down my shock after we jack this back up a little bit, and we're ready to take it for a drive. Let's do it. Well, there it is installed. Not a difficult job, kind of weird, I won't lie. The problem with this kit is that it didn't come with any instructions. And while somebody like me can figure it out, if you're not mechanically minded or you're kind of shade tree, this might be a pain in the butt for you. It really, it should come with a simple one sheet, note. You can hand type it. It doesn't even have to have pictures. But because it didn't, it kind of leave you in the dark. And I did go on their website and see if they had anything listed on their website. They don't. So, yeah, not a bad job. Not difficult by any means, but there's a couple things you just want to be careful with. Getting these springs in and out was a little bit more of a pain than it is on most cars. I was surprised at that. Not impossible by any means. You saw I did it. And although I struggled a little bit getting them back in on both sides, they both went in. The little rubber insulators are in place, so everything went fairly normal, I would say. But the big test will be whether it was worth it or not. And I guess I'll leave that in a post sometime down the road when I've put a few thousand miles on it, and I can tell you if it was worth the money or not. Anyway, that'll do it for me for today. I hope you liked the video. I hope you will like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Take care.